All right, family, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Go ahead and open up in prayer. If our hearts and minds are clear. Baruch atah Yahuwah, Shabbat Shalom Almighty Elohim, Total Rabah B'Yah, for this beloved Shabbat day, O Yahuwah, that you will bless us with, to be able to come before you, O Yahuwah, and just esteem you and magnify you above all forever, O Yahuwah, for you are worthy of all praise, Almighty Yah. Father, we just humble ourselves in your presence, giving you all esteem and honor, for truly you are the one true and living Elohim, and there is none else, Almighty Yah. Father, we are just grateful for your mercy, your grace, your favor that you show towards us each and every day. And we just humble ourselves in your presence, asking that you will please forgive us for any iniquities, any sins, any transgressions that we have committed against you, Abba Yah, be it consciously or unconsciously. We just ask that you will continue to purify our hearts, our minds, our soul, and our spirit within us, Almighty Yah, that you will purify us and renew us, and that the same mind of Mashiach be also in us, Father, that we would continue to guide and guard your word, O Yahuwah, diligently, and that we continue to set our hearts and our things and our affections upon you and those things that are above, O Yahuwah. That we be rooted in your word, Almighty Yah, rooted in you to where we are not shaken or moved with the world, O Yahuwah. We just pray that you continue to lead us and guide us in the path that we ought to go, Father Yah. And we just pray that your rock and your spirit continue to fill us and that we will yield to your spirit and bear the fruit of your spirit, O Yahuwah. And Father, we just pray as we open your word today that you will minister to our hearts, that you will fill us with your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding from on high, O Yahuwah, and that you will give us divine revelation by your spirit, O Yah. And we just pray that we will receive your word, O Yahuwah, on good ground in Yahusha's name, that it may bring forth fruit unto perfection, Abba Yah, that we all might be perfect unto you and lacking nothing for our destinies. We pray for all Israel scattered throughout the four corners, striving for righteousness, that you continue to bless them on this beloved day. Anybody that may need healing, Father, we ask that you touch their bodies, O Yahuwah, that you would restore them and make them whole in the mighty name of Yahushua Mashiach. And we just pray for anyone who may be battling strongholds, Father Yah, that you would heal them and restore them, and that they will be loose from any demonic oppression on Yahuwah, that they may walk in the liberty in Yahushua Mashiach. And Father, we just thank you for your goodness and your faithfulness, and we just pray that your will be done on earth as it is in Shemayim forevermore. In Yahushua Mashiach's name. Baruch atah Yahuwah. Hallelujah. 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 Amen. Amen. So, disclaimer before we get started, the information and data in this lesson and lessons hereafter are not based on any one individual, be it in this assembly, locally, or abroad. I do not speak as the authority on the subject. These lessons were not developed by myself alone. I'll be sharing wisdom and revelation that the Most High has given me through the scriptures and experience. All wisdom and understanding from the elders and patriarchs and matriarchs that have came before me. The lesson that is being provided is for supported learning in Torah and building a foundation in our Hebraic culture. This series of lessons is for informational purposes and deliverance. The information provided through the scriptures should never be used without studying, praying, and or fasting on your own. If the lessons within the series hit certain points that you feel or believe have something to do with you, all praises to the Most High, receive that knowledge and the solution to your life. Do not take anything personal or offensive and miss the message that is being given to help edify and solidify your salvation and walk with the Most High and his people. And for the record, I am not a male chauvinist nor misogynist. Mishalia Proverbs 18:13 says, "He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him." Sirach 4:25 says, "In no wise speak against the truth, but be abased of the error of thine ignorance." Sirach 5:11 says, "Be swift to hear, and let thy life be sincere, and with patience give answer. If thou hast understanding, answer thy neighbor. If not, lay thy hand upon thy mouth." So the rules of engagement: please keep your mic muted except when asking or answering a question. Use the mic to speak. There's a feature on Zoom in the meeting room where you can raise your hand and if you have a question. All questions must be on the topic. You have 60 seconds to ask or answer your question. If you surpass your 60 seconds, your mic will be muted for you. These rules are due to time and the recordings of the lesson. These are live teachings, so we must give the moray enough time to complete the lesson. At the end of the lesson, there will be time for question and answers pertaining to the lesson, so please be patient. All right. So we're continuing, family, and understanding the roles of relationships from a Hebraic understanding, from a Hebraic perspective. All right. This lesson is not gonna be that long. We're just completing because we didn't finish last week, so we're completing that this week. All right. These again are the resources that are used for the lesson for your own records. All right. All right. So we're picking up where we left off. We're gonna open up here in Colossians 3 and 18. Everybody with me, Colossians 3 and 18.
And it reads, Wives, subject yourselves to your own husbands, as is fit proper in the master.
Right. So that's what that word fit means, right? It means to be as proper in the master. So we see wives are to subject themselves, right? We went over these words, right? On what subject or submit means and all these things. So hopefully y'all remember that, right? And so as it is proper in the master, for you are supposed to submit to your husband as unto the master, right? Colossians 3 and 19.
Husbands, love your wives, and do not be bitter toward them.
Cain, right? So it says, husbands, to love your wives and do not be bitter towards them, right? So we have to look up what this word means here, bitter, right? And bitter is the Greek word here, pikrano, right? Pikrano, and what it means is to make bitter, right? Means to produce a bitter taste in the stomach, right? It says to embitter or exasperate, right? Render angry or indignant, to be embittered or irritated, right? To visit with bitterness, to grieve or deal bitterly with, right? Um, so we'll look at the root word also is pikros, right? And pikros means through the idea of piercing, right? Sharp or pungent, that is accurate, literally or figuratively, bitter, right? So, sometimes in marriages, men if their wives are, not meeting, the standard or what he sees he's requiring or something, they have a disagreement or something happens. Sometimes he can, a husband may turn bitter or become bitter towards his wife where he's very sharp, right? He's very piercing with his words, very short, right? He has no, energy to even give her any attention, and he just pretty much starts treating her just like a some roommate or somebody in the house that is just there, right? So these are different bitter ways men end up can end up dealing with their wives, um, and we see that the word is telling us not to allow ourselves to go to that point, right? So we see the Thayer's definition here, the Greek lexicon says bitter. It says metaphorically harsh, right? Being harsh with your wives, right? Virulent, right? So, it also means the idea of piercing being sharp or pungent, that's being bitter. So you should not be like that towards your spouse, right? Everybody okay with that? Yeah, right. All right. So keep in mind, this is talking about loving one another, right? And is this in Torah, right? And we know that loving each other is in Torah. In fact, that, scripture tells us in Leviticus 19, let's read that real quick. Wa'ikra chapter 19, verse 18.
Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people,
Mhm.
and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh.
So even your wife is your neighbor, right? So you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself, and your wife really is yourself actually too, right? So you wouldn't hate yourself, right? So you shouldn't hate your wife. You shouldn't be bitter. You wouldn't be bitter towards yourself, even if you find yourself sometimes messing up or slacking in certain areas that you got to discipline, right? get back in order. You don't deal bitterly with yourself. You encourage yourself, right? You try to get yourself to get up and do what you got to do. So love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. Don't take vengeance, right? Or bear a grudge if something takes place, right? And you get angry to where you start holding things in your heart against your wife. Uh, yes, you don't want to allow these things, how bitterness and these things creep up and fester in your heart, right? So you got to constantly be examining yourself, walking in forgiveness, right? So you don't find yourself in the prison of your own heart, thinking that you doing something, all you doing is deteriorating yourself, right? So that word neighbor, just for y'all, just for edification purposes here, right? That word neighbor is the Hebrew word re'ah, and it means an associate, more or less close, a brother, even your companion, right? Your husband or your wife, your fellow friend, right? A lover, right? Your neighbor. So all these cover your neighbor, from your companion, your brother, your sister, your friend, even an associate that may be close to you or not close to you, right? Your neighbor, right? A fellow Israelite, right? Of the kinship, right? So all these consider your neighbor that you are supposed to love and not hold vengeance or hold any grudge against, right? So no matter how somebody may have hurt you, even in your own life, they could have been a brother, your mother, your father. They could have traumatized you, right? But you're not supposed to or bear a grudge, right? Because that's how you become embittered, right? To where y'all can't use you. You're in the prison now, and demons is keeping you there, right? Because you created a space that invited them to keep you stagnant and stuck, right? And you thinking you doing something, to make them feel some type of way, for them to teach them a lesson, but all you doing is destroying yourself, right? Because that's not, y'all didn't create you to do that, to express that to your neighbor or your fellow man, all right? So the only thing you can do is release it to Yahuwah, be the example that you want to see, and don't allow your heart to grow dark because of the conduct and behavior of others, right? Or things they have done to you. If anything, you grow, you learn from those things, and you create, healthy boundaries, and you go forward in the same love that you had before, the situation or the altercation or traumatizing situation happened, right? Allow Yahuwah to heal you, you know, and grow and continue to go forward. The root word to Rea here is, it says Rea, and it means friend, companion, fellow, another person, friend, intimate, fellow citizen, right? Another person in a weaker sense, right? So now that word neighbor means your husband or lover, we see that there is a love that must take place between the two, right? So I'm gonna go to First Peter or First Kepha chapter 3, verse 7.
Likewise, ye husbands, deal well with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife, as unto the weaker vessel, as they being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered.
So we see, right, that it says, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, right? And honoring your wife, right? Honor her position, what she brings to the relationship, right? The gifts or the talents or skills that she brings, right? You don't want to you know, oppress them or depress them. You want her to be able to function, right? The way y'all purpose her to function in your life, because it's a great value to you, right? So you guys are heirs together, right? You don't want anything hindering your household, hindering your prayers, hindering your blessings, your abundance that y'all has in store for you. So y'all have to be on one accord, right? So we talked about last week what honor is, right? And they're heirs together, so you're going to be together, so you need to agree, right? Right. So let's look at Sirach 25, verse 1.
In three things I was beautiful, and stood up beautiful both before Elohim and men. The unity of brothers, the love of neighbors, a man and a wife that agree together.
There it is, right? So these are the three things how the Most High, the Elohim, is beautified, right? And it's both before Elohim and man, and it's the unity of brethren, right? So to be brother, and when you break up that word in Hebrew, is to be a cod, right? It's to be in oneness and unity, right? To be a defender, right? For your brother against an adversary, right? This is to dwell in oneness and unity, the love of neighbors, right? And a man and a wife that agree together. So Yahuwah loves unity; he hates division, right? The adversary comes to kill, steal, and destroy, comes to bring division, right? Sirach 22, verse 23.
Be faithful to thy neighbor in his poverty,
Mhm.
that thou mayest rejoice in his prosperity. Abide steadfast unto him in the time of his trouble, that thou mayest be heir with him in his heritage. For mean estate is not always to be condemned, nor the rich that is foolish to be had in admiration.
There it is, right? So it says to be faithful to thy neighbor in his poverty. So remember, your neighbor, if you and a husband and wife, your wife is your neighbor, your husband is your neighbor, right? So it says be faithful to thy neighbor in his poverty. So if you got a husband and he succumbs to some type of poverty, that means you still supposed to be loyal to him and faithful to him. That don't mean now's the time to leave him to go find some man that got some money and stuff, right? That doesn't mean now's the opportunity to make your move, right? To get up out the situation. It says, no, be faithful that thou mayest rejoice in his prosperity, meaning stay down with him until he comes back up again, right? Because he ain't gonna stay there if he belong to the Father, right? So many times you'll be tested to see your loyalty in situations, right? To see if you're gonna stay faithful and loyal even amongst adversity or through different life, trials and struggles, right? So it says, abide steadfast unto him in the time of his trouble. So you should be cleaving to him. You should be able to feel like he can count on you being there for him, even in the time of trouble that he's going through, right? That thou mayest be heir with him in his heritage, because now you're proving yourself worthy to be a part of the inheritance that Yahuwah is going to blessing this man with, right? For him being a faithful servant and doing his Yahuwah's will and purpose for his life throughout all the trials and tribulations this man goes through. You as a wife has decided to vow a vow between you and him that for better or worse, or rich or poor, for you know to the end, right? So you're going to be having to stand on those vows, and who is going to, through life, you're going to be tested to see, are you going to honor these vows? All right. Are you going to stay faithful, steadfast, right? So you can be proven, right? And once proven, that's the man has no problem with giving you inheritance and making sure that you are set up and fine and for the rest of your life, right? He wants a man that loves you wants to make sure that you provided for, you have everything you need and then some, right? It says, for a mean estate is not always to be contemned, nor the rich that is foolish to be hid in admiration. All right. So again, all this has to do with us being loving ourselves, right? Loving your neighbor as yourself. Because if it was you, you wouldn't want nobody to abandon you at a low time in your life that you're going through something, right? You wouldn't want nobody to betray you and leave you for something like that. If you're supposed to be lovers and truly servants of Elohim. All right. All right. Let's look again at first key for First Peter chapter 3, verse 7.
Likewise, ye husbands dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, your prayers be not hindered.
There it is, right? So we're gonna look at that word knowledge for a second, right? It says, ye husbands, you are to dwell with them according to knowledge. All right. So knowledge here in the Greek is gnosos or gnosis, right? And it means knowing the act, right? That is by implication knowledge, science, right? Now, the Thayer's lexicon definition, it says knowledge signifies in general intelligence and understanding, right? Deal with your wife according to general intelligence that you have about her and understanding concerning her, right? The general knowledge of Mashiach, it says a general knowledge of Christian religion, which we know it isn't Christian, is just the term they use. All right. Uh, it says the deeper, more perfect, and enlarged knowledge of this religion, such as belongs to the more advanced, especially of things lawful and unlawful for quote unquote Christians or Nazarenes or Israelites according to covenant, right? Moral wisdom, moral wisdom such as is seen in right living, right? So deal with your wife according to moral wisdom, the laws, statutes, and commandments, such as is seen in right living, right? Also, when you look at the root word to knowledge, it is gnosko, right? Now, gnosko, it says to know absolutely, right? In a great variety of applications and with many implications, right? So you get to know your spouse in such a way where you know her in many ways, right? You know how she is, you know how she acts, you know how these things may cause her to be this way when this is said, or in certain environments she's like this. You're very observant, right? You know her in a variety of applications with many implications, right? It says it's shown at left with others, not thus clearly expressed. Allow. So notice that you know her in a way that others don't know her, right? Things that are not clearly expressed on the surface, right? These are deep things within because you have spent time with this woman, you've observed her, you know her weaknesses, you know her strengths, you know things that kind of is her insecurity, you know her, right? In such a way. It says be aware of things how she feel, know, knowledge, perceive, how she perceives, be resolved, right? How the best way to resolve a problem or a situation, to speak, be sure and understand, right? So you have all this to have an understanding of your spouse. So deal with them according to that understanding, right? So it means knowing the act, and if you want your Isha to know something or learn something, you have to educate them on that, right? It also means to perceive, to be resolved, to be sure and understand. Okay. So if it's according to knowledge, you're going to have to do something to where they are clear as to what you're asking. Okay. Because if they're not, then this is where the disconnect comes, right? Well, I thought this is what you meant, so this is why I did it, right? But you didn't say this part. Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Let me go ahead and talk about that, right? So communication, right, is very key. Uh, um, Teaching and showing them first, and then letting them walk in it and fulfill the instructions. But if you just want her to come in and do things without actually teaching, showing, and letting her see the example that you want, then she can be able to walk in that and fulfill it. All right. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 5 verse 25.
Husbands, love your wives as Messiah also did love the assembly and gave himself for it,
Mhm.
in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word.
So when you take a wife, you begin a possession, right? She's your possession, right? She's a prized possession. Also, you nourish it, right? You take care of this possession, and you also cleanse it. You keep it clean, right? Because just like you have some shoes or something like that. It's maybe one of your dearest possessions, and you go outside, you show it off. You're very proud about your shoes. You love them, you like them. They're your favorite shoes, right? Sometimes they get dirty along the way, though, from the house going where you're going and coming back. Certain things may come upon it, and you gotta make sure to keep up the maintenance of it, to keep it so it can last long. So the same thing with a wife, right? You nourish it, you take care of it, you wash it, you keep it clean because you about preservation. Yahuwah is about preservation. That's why he calls us the salt of the earth. And what does salt do? It preserves things. It keeps things lasting for a long time. So as men, we are designated to do this, right? We're making sure that we're preserving our wives, right? and making sure that we're washing them with the water of the word of Elohim, because the things in this world sometimes can distract, sometimes can influence, and you want to make sure the word of Yah is washing off all that dirt that the world tries to put upon the wife and her mindset and the way she thinks and see things and perceives things, right? So you constantly washing her with the word of Elohim, so her mind and her conscience is on things above, right? And of the inner man and the heart and the spirit, opposed to the fleshly and the outward things. Not saying we ain't supposed to take care of the outward things, but it should be a direct reflection of the inner cleansing that is taking place, right? So that's the duty as a husband, right? To nourish. That's how you nourish her, right? Washing her, and you're supposed to set her apart, right? You're supposed to present her clean before Yahuwah Elohim. So this is a woman who belongs to you, but she ultimately belongs to Yahuwah, right? And you are the one who is stewarding this, right? She's under your stewardship. Yahuwah is entrusting you with this soul, right? To make sure that you are, preserving it, washing it, nourishing it, to grow and blossom to be the beautiful uh, uh, flower, right, that she is within your garden. All right. So this is this sacrificial love. It's what leaving father and mother and cleaving to his wife means, right? He makes the performance of this role more important than other things that he may want to do, right? So you notice he has a duty, and he makes this one of the most important things, right? He takes as much time as it takes to patiently teach and talk to her for the assimilation process to be complete, because his wife is supposed to assimilate to him, right? And through the assimilation process, you are investing in her, you're pouring into her, right? Because you are looking to receive a harvest at a point in time, right? You sow seeds, you water the seed, and you do all this because you are expecting a harvest. The harvest don't come the next day you start planting the seed, right? It don't come the 4 days later after you've been watering it, right? It takes time. So knowing that how trees grow, you have to understand and have patience with your wife as you are pouring into her, and for her to produce that harvest that you are expecting in due season, just like God does with us, right? During the feast days, he's seeing what we produce from the summer to the fall, right? From spring and so forth. He expects us on certain dates to see what we have done and what we are producing. And you do the same thing with your Isha, right? Throughout the seasons of life, just like when you come before Yahuwah not empty-handed, supposed to have fruits in the harvest to show you've been learning and growing, right? So this is something you should have in your household, something that you have a daily routine and teaching and washing your wife with the word, and watching her productivity and her growth and so forth, right? So this is very important. All right. So the instructions here is that cleansing is by the word, right? And this underscores the concept of Genesis and Numbers, that the husband's means of administration or dominion is by his speaking of the word. All right, just the way that he is in the likeness of the Most High. He speaks things as though they were, even though they're not. Right? He prophesies over his wife. Right? He designates her in a position that he sees fit for her in his household to produce for his household, to help fulfill the purpose and mission that Elohim has given him. Right? He is the master of the house, the prophet of his house, his priest of the house. Right? The head, the master. So just as the Most High said, "Let there be light," Adam named the creatures of his environment, right? Adam was held accountable for teaching the commandment of prohibition about the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? He's supposed to teach his wife, like, hey, we ain't supposed to eat from this tree. This is forbidden. This is what Yahuwah said that we are to remain from, right? Everything else we have access to, but he has told us to stay away from this, right? He was supposed to be teaching her that. And the husband of Numbers 30 could nullify his wife's idle words, right? Notice when we read last week in Numbers 30 how if his wife decides to do something without his consent, he can null and void what she did, right? If she makes vows, right, without his consent on it, right, and she doesn't fulfill those vows, he can always disannul it to where that sin isn't held against her. But see, Adam didn't do that. He allowed what she did, and then he partook with her in the sin. You see that he didn't disannul it, he didn't cast it down, and nullify it. That's what he didn't do it. So as men, Yahuwah is charging us to not follow what Adam did and learn from that, right? And correct our wives, right? Be the example for her to see and constantly replenish her and washing her with the word, right? So she stays in according to the purpose and will of Elohim. So um he is aware of his rights and authority to nullify his wife's idle words. The husband's tool of administration of his family is the word, right? That's how he speaks over his household, his children, his wives, so forth, right? That he might cleanse her with the washing of the water by the word, and she needs to be cleansed so that he can see the word become fulfilled, right? Because this is ultimately the word of Elohim being fulfilled in his life, right? And watching it in his wife's life to see the word of Yahuwah being brought forth, right? All right. Wives, all right, do not think you can be cleansed by your own personal Bible study or prayer. You need your righteous head or husband to cleanse you by the repeated washing of the water by the word. All right. So of course you have, as a daughter of Elohim, you have your own relationship with Yah. You study, you wash and get in the word of Yahuwah as well. But you also need your husband, right? And his uh uh routine, right, and consistency, right, of washing you repeatedly with the word of Elohim. Wives, um, you will not sustainably rise spiritually above your husband. Okay, so you shouldn't have that in your mindset. If there's a grave spiritual mismatch to a reprobate husband, Yahuwah will move him or replace him. In the same manner, the government of Mashiach operates through the delivery and exemplification of the word of Elohim by Yahushua HaMashiach. That word is quickened and has within it everything that is needed to accomplish the task that is sent forth to do through the life or the lives of the elect, right? So the husband has the power, right, of bringing things into existence by the power of the word. Yah gave him that authoritative power. So he speaks it and it becomes what that is, right? Just like Adam spoke on what he wanted this animal to be, and that animal became what that was. If he called it an ant eater, it all of a sudden started eating ants. That's what it produced. That's what it did. And it was like called an ant eater. He called it that, right? He called these different things, and as if if it wasn't as though it were, and it became that. So that's the authority and the power that each has over his house and his family, right? All according to the purpose that Yah's put in him to do and for his house to flourish and produce. All right. So this is how Mashiach can now be in many places at the same time, right? Because his Ruach or his set apart spirit is in believers who allow him to reign in their households and take him with them everywhere they go, right? His kingdom is not of this world, but it has dominion in earth as it is in heaven. So Yahusha said, I and the Father are one. What you see me do is what I have seen my Father do. Right. So he mimics his household after his father's household. Right. And the more households that are mimicked after his father's household throughout the earth is how you become fruitful and multiplying the kingdom of Elohim. And then we expand the kingdom throughout the earth. And now when he looks down the earth, it's a reflection of Shemayim. Right. Because that's what his desire is, for as it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. He wants it to be one in unity again. And that's our position as men, to create households in the image and likeness of Elohim so that the kingdom of Elohim is on earth, right? So this is how Mashiach again is everywhere, because he's within us and we multiplying families and households in his image, right? Yes, Yahoo, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 through 7.
For a child is born unto us, a son is given unto us,
Mhm.
and the rule is on his shoulder. And his name is called Wonder Counselor, Strong El, Father of Continuity, Prince of Shalom, Peace.
There it is, right? So this child that's being born, which is the prophecy, right, of Mashiach, even though, Isaiah's son is being used in this situation, but it's a prophetic revelation of Mashiach, right? And how he will be called a wonderful counselor, right? A strong El, a mighty one, right? A father. That's why you see in Revelations, he calls himself a father, right? And I will call you my son, right? A prince of peace. He's all these things, right? And notice this is what a man is. This is what a husband is too. He's supposed to be a counselor in his household, right? He's supposed to be a mighty one of his house, right? He's supposed to be a father. When a woman leaves her father and mother, the husband takes on the role of the father, the protector, the provider, the head of the house. He takes on that, right? He's a prince, right? Or principality in the home, right? He has authority in the home. He's supposed to make sure his house is in shalom, right? And anything that coming to bring adversity to shalom, he is a defender of his house to make sure chaos does not reign within his house, right? Yeshayahu chapter 9, verse 7.
Of the increase of his rule and peace there is no end upon the throne of David and over his reign, to establish it and sustain it with right ruling and with righteousness from now on, even forever. The adorer of Yahuwah of hosts does this.
And came, right? So we see all this is prophetic. This is what Mashiach will come and do, right? And he is fulfilling to this day, right? Till he returns. Let's look at Yehukanan chapter 17, verse 8.
Because the words which you gave to me I have given to them, and they have received them, and have truly known that came forth from you, and they believe that you sent.
There it is, right? So notice Mashiach is talking to his wife, right? He's talking to his bride and says, Father, you trained me to be a husband, right? I'm following your example that I seen in Shemayim with you in the Rock HaKodesh, right? So guess what? You, right? The words which you gave me, I gave to them. I washed them with the water of the word that you gave me, right? And they've received it, right? And truly known that I came from you, right? So they know that I'm your son, right? Just like again, your wife's supposed to know that you are a son of El, right? That you are uh uh uh, uh you know ambassador of Hamashiach, right? You a disciple of Yahusha, right? Because y'all supposed to be equally yoked, all right? And therefore they believe that you sent me, right? So your actions, you be the example, right? You have to lead by example, all right? Yehukanan 17 and 9.
I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours.
So remember, he understood. Mashiach understands, like, look, Father, you chose me and you chose a wife for me, right? I'm washing my wife with the word, right? She believes that you sent me, that, I'm ordained to be her husband, right? And I pray for my wife, right? I don't pray for the world, but for those whom you have given me, you've given me this wife as my possession, right? Which is Israel, right? The disciples, the remnant that he's taken out, right? And he says, even though you gave them to me, I still understand that they are yours, Father. Yes, you've given them to me for me to be under my stewardship, but ultimately they belong to you. And it's the same thing with you and your wife. She belongs to you. She's your possession because Yahuwah gave her to you, right? But ultimately, you know that she belongs to Yah. So you steward her well. You make sure you're representing Yahuwah, right? In that stewardship, because ultimately you got to answer to Yahuwah for all things under your stewardship, how you treated it, how you nourished it, or if you forsook it, or if you didn't do your part in what you're supposed to do. Because on the feast days, you get inspected. Your wife is getting expected from you, and you getting expected from Yahuwah to see if you producing fruit. Are you growing, right? Or are you being stagnant, right? So all these things is Yahuwah is our example on how to be the men of our households, how to conduct our households, how to be the heads of our house and the leaders of our family. All right. John 17 and 10.
And all mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been esteemed in them.
Mhm.
And I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you. Set apart, Father, guard them in your name, which you have given me, so that they might be one as we are.
There it is, right? So notice this is the engagement process, this is the courtship. he has paid the dowry price. He's about to pay for it, right? He says, "Look, I courted her. She's agreeing to the terms of the covenant of the agreement of me being her ish, her husband, right? So now they're gonna be a part of our family, right? The Most High and Yahusha they're having a conversation. He's like, look, I brought them, I'm making them mine. Now they're gonna be a part of the family, the unit, right? An extension of your house, father, right? And now I'm leaving to go prepare a place for her to dwell with me, right? Remember, he says, I leave to go, and that where I am, you may be also, right? And he's letting you know that I set you apart by washing you with the word, right? And you're going to be guarded in my name, right? Because look, I have my father's name. The head of the husband carries the name of the lineage. It's patrilineal, right? You are what your father is, and you carry on his name. So Mashiach carries the father's name. Husbands, we carry on our father's name, and a woman is now covered by our name. So now she's recognized in society by being so and so's wife, right? She's the house of a Yaziyahu, or the house of so and so, whoever that wife is, right? She's covered by the name, and so men don't violate because they understand she belongs to somebody, right? And his name is on her, right? So you respect that by respecting that man, and you respect his wife, right? Today, a lot of women don't want their husband's last name, right? All that is not the culture of what the Most High gave us. The woman carries the man's name. She takes on his name because now she's a part of his house, and she has certain access to certain things, right? Certain doors are open for her. Protection is given to her because she's under that name, right? Ephesians 5:27.
In order to present it to himself a splendid assembly,
Mhm.
not having spot or wrinkle or any other sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless.
Can. You see that, right? So the motivation of the husband is to give his wife the words of the Most High. And as he has assimilated to the Most High, his wife is to assimilate to her husband. All right. Any area of disagreement, disobedience, or lack of unity or lack of oneness is a spot or blemish. Okay, so that's why through the assimilation process and him washing her, he's getting her to be in perfect alignment with him, his purpose, and his destiny, right? And how she submits, and it becomes just a way of life for her. It's not something she has to force. It's not something that she has to, make herself do. It's just a rhythm and a flow that she walks in, right? Because she's been through the assimilation process, just like he had to go through the assimilation process of being a servant of Elohim. Understanding I'm a servant, my life isn't my own. I don't dictate what I'm going to do. If it's in the Father's will, that's what I can do. I check with the Father to make sure this is what He wants me to do, just like the wife is supposed to do with the Ish. And every time the wife is doing that and has that humble reverence and submission, it's reflecting back to the husband how he's supposed to be with his husband, right? Which is Mashiach, right? So it's the same thing. It's a constant reflection of each other, mirroring each other, so they stay in alignment with the purpose and will of Elohim and the fear of Elohim. All right. So if your wife, if you look at her, you don't see the reflection back, right? You don't see, she don't, the way she serves and how she doesn't make you reverence Yahuwah, right? Then that shows something. That shows that, hey, either something's not being done, right? Or you need to go and figure out, what did you choose, right? So again, this is why being equally yoked is very important. We don't choose wives because of how cute they are, right? Of course, we want a beautiful wife, but beauty starts from inward, from within first, right? So you need to be really concentrated on that before everything else. Now, any residue of fear or error in his wife is a blemish, okay? Any residue of fear or error in his wife is a blemish. Again, we're supposed to be spotless brides to Mashiach. Your wife should be a spotless bride to you in your house. All right. The husband understands that his wife was given to him as the elect were called or given to Mashiach. Mashiach had to redeem his bride from the possession of a foreign enemy, then fulfill the mandatory time, right, known only to the Father, of cleansing before he could present her to himself and take her, right? Thus, there is a mandatory time of teaching as much as is needed for complete assimilation to him as he becomes one with Mashiach. So before wife completes this process, right? This is the assimilation process. So in your courtship, in your time of all that, you should be washing her, pouring into her, teaching her your ways of your house, your culture, your tribe, all these different things, right? So she can know how to assimilate properly when she comes into your household when you guys marry each other. All right. All right. So let's look at Revelations 12, verse 11.
And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death.
They did not love their lives to the death, right? So the husband has a testimony for his wife and a sacrificial love, which is evidenced by the fact that he didn't just talk about the Most High, right? He loved not his own life. He himself submitted to the governance set up by Mashiach in the assembly, right? So, in other words, just as believers, right? And see that and they see how the Mashiach suffered willingly, right? Without complaining to do the will of the Most High. He didn't complain about it, right? He was focused on fulfilling the desire and the purpose of Elohim. A wife needs to see her husband model submission by example as he submits to ordained authorities, even within the assembly, right? So the husband models submission, how he submits to his father, how he submits to his authorities, even Yahuwah and Mashiach, right? And then the wife also submits to the Ish, right? Everybody's in submission, okay? But everybody into respect on whose submission is due, right? So when a wife sees that her husband is sober-minded about his walk in Mashiach, she is convinced and convicted by his testimony that Elohim is real, okay? And he is not a respecter of persons, right? Some husbands need to repent unto the Most High because they have not loved sacrificially, right? They have not given themselves yet, right? So love for men is sacrificial, right? Just like the love of Mashiach was sacrificial. So if you choosing a woman, you don't really feel like you love her, you would lay your life down for her if it came to that, then that's probably not a woman you need to take as your wife, right? If you're not, if that's not a a willing factor, right, where you willingly would love and never even question to lay your life down for this woman, then if you don't feel that way, then you shouldn't take her, right? Because that's designated for wives. Okay, and every woman isn't a wife, so you should discern the type of women you are around or you considering. All right. But love is sacrificial for the man, right? A submission is how the woman shows love. All right. So they still do what they feel like doing as it pertains to their submission to Mashiach, and women and children see this and are led astray, right? So if you're not fully submitted to Mashiach, where you pick and choose what you want to do and what you don't want to do, your wife is watching your example. So you expect her to submit in all things, but you're not submitting in all things to Mashiach. So you post a model submission. You see that? So you can't be expecting so much from her when you're not giving so much to Mashiach. All right. You haven't surrendered your life to Mashiach to where it's no longer you, right? Not your will, right? But his will be done, right? So if that's not the type of attitude you have to Mashiach, then what are you expecting out of your wife? Because y'all post a mirror, which you post a mirror, right? So you have to be the lead by example, right? And then she follows that. And when you lead by example and she's not following up with that, you need to teach her, right? You need to show her, and then she's supposed to follow that. If she's not doing that, then you need these again, these are things you're supposed to be inspecting beforehand. All right. So the husband's role is to love. All right, let's look at Ephesians 5 and 28.
In this way, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself.
There it is, right? So we understood that if you love your wives as you love your own body, now I don't know too many guys that love beating their bodies up, right? So if you don't beat your body up, but you nourish it and you treat it with love and care, you should treat your Isha the same way, right? So just as Adam said Eve was bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, right? Each husband should recognize that his wife is a part of him, right? So when he truly recognizes that he is a part, that she is a part of him, right? He will cleave to her, right? He'll cleave to himself. He's not going to cleave to something foreign from himself, right? That's why I said you need to expect to make sure you're wifing up a wife, right? Not every woman is. Make sure you're wifing up a wife, and if you wifing up a wife, you should cleave to her because you understand that she is you, right? You cleave to your own self, so when you with her, you cleave her with her the same way, right? And this cleaving is the cherishing and the nourishing, which he does, right? And these are her also her conjugal rights, right? He cherishes and nourishes her with love and teaching of the word from moment to moment. All right. Ephesians 5:29.
For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it as also the master does the assembly.
Right. So Mashiach is our example of that, right? And that word nourisheth, right? Here is the Greek word ektrifo, right? Ektrifo, if I'm saying that right, right? It says to rear up to maturity. You heard that? To rear up to maturity. That is generally to cherish or to train, bring up, nurture, nourish, right? So you're supposed to train your wife how you want her to serve you, how you want her to do, just like Mashiach trains us and has us go through things and experiences to help us grow and mature, right? He disciplines us. He does all these things. He has that authority of being the head, just like you have the authority of being the head over your wife. It's not to abuse your authority, right? But it's to use your authority for her growth, right? She may not understand why you're doing what you're doing, right? But you see things in her that she doesn't see, right? You see her potential, so you set tasks and things for her to do to help her grow, right? To renew her mind, to do all these different things, just as Mashiach does for us, right? So you train her, all right? So the definition for that word nourish is to rear up to maturity, to train, to bring up, to nourish, all right? Um, also, notice that the training is your job. It's not her job, right? So if you nourish her, if you find a woman, you nourish a lot, you nourish the things that you see that's already in her makeup, if you will, right? That's what they do, right? So if that's what they do, then who are they doing that to, right? So let's just say the children. So you want your child to be raised a certain way, right? And which is in righteousness, of course, right? But while we're doing that, who's the head of that child? You know, the mother and the father. So if you know you're the head of your wife, right, then you should nourish her and train her or mature her and bring her up as well. Because if she's down here, right, and you just growing and being filled with the word and stuff, and you're not sharing that with her to help her also ascend with you, it's gonna be a breach between you two, right? You're gonna start feeling like y'all don't even see eye to eye and y'all on two different, you know what I'm saying, levels when you're supposed to be helping her come up with you, right? You're not supposed to neglect your duty as the east of washing her with the word, helping her grow in her understanding, right? All these different things. You're not supposed to neglect those duties, right? Because you're going to be extending and growing, and she needs to be there with you, right? So she can be a good support for you. All right. So, if not, you're gonna have a problem, right? So she may have an understanding here, you may be way up there, and you like, you didn't get it, and you like, man, oh my gosh, you don't understand this, right? So you have to spend some time with her, all right? So, uh, to think you can neglect that, and she's just going to be able to perform for you the way she should, or where you expecting as you're growing, it's not a good understanding, okay? So you do these things in love to bring her up to your level, right? And to be on one accord. All right. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 30.
Because we are members of his body and his flesh and of his bones.
Mm-hmm.
For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and the two shall become a cod,
There it
one
is.
flesh.
There it is, right? So it is for the elect to understand this mystery of marriage, right? It's for the elect to understand this mystery of marriage here that we're looking at, because this mystery is great, and he's talking about the Messiah and the assembly, right? Which is the example. So this is the corporate role of a wife, right? And it's ours as the called out ones, right? In relation to our husband, the Mashiach. So the economy of this mysterious process is through stewardship of the ordained authorities of the word. All right. So look at Miss Shalia, Proverbs 18 and 21.
Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those loving it eat its fruit. He who has found a wife has found good and received favor from Yahweh.
There it is. All right. So the favor is the opportunity to have stewardship of a piece of land, right? Wherewith a husband can plant the word and cherish and nourish the garden, right? Then present to Mashiach the fruit of that harvest, glorifying Mashiach and obtaining a reward, right? That's how you have to have your mindset when you're taking a wife and you're buying a plot of land to sow seeds to produce a harvest for Mashiach, that he can be well pleased on how you nourish that as being a husbandman of that garden that he gave you stewardship over, right? So the gift of a natural husband and wife is the opportunity to practice these principles of love and submission, right? The man plows in the garden for the field to yield fruit, right? That's what you are sowing and investing into your wife, for her to yield fruit back for the all the labor of love that you pouring into her, right? So the perfection or maturity of the body of believers is oneness in submission to Mashiach, who already had submitted himself to the Father. So this is how it works. The Father is the great husbandman, right? Mashiach constantly tells you that. So men, we are husbandmen, right? And we have to see things from the of reaping and sowing and harvest time and seeding time to understand how you deal with your ishas, right? Because all of it is that. Everything is uh in sync, right, with earth and everything. And, the moon, all this stuff has to do with us, right? And y'all's giving us these things and these cycles of things for us to understand the human experience, even through the physical harvesting and reaping and so forth, right? All of it is at play. Ephesians 4 verse 11.
And he himself gave some as emissaries,
Hmm.
emissaries, and some are prophets, and some evangelists, and some shepherds and teachers,
Verse 12.
for the perfecting of the set apart ones to the work of service, to a building up the body of the Messiah.
So notice there are authorities, right, that Yahuwah even sets up in the assembly, right? These are your apostles and your prophets and evangelists and pastors and mores, right? They're for the perfecting, just like the husband is in his house operating uh, 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 in these roles over his wife and his children, right? For the perfecting, right? To present spotless, to purify, right? So this is what the ordained authorities, that are in the assembly do, just as a husband is the ordained authority in his house is supposed to be doing and operating in over his wife and children that he stewards, right? So it's for the perfection of the set apart ones, verse 13.
Until we all come to the unity of the belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man,
Mm.
to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah.
And that's how you're supposed to be in your own household as a husband, wife, and children, right? You're supposed to be perfecting this in such a way to where you're building it up as the body of Mashiach. You are an extension of his body on earth. Your household is an extension of the Mashiach's body, right? The extension of the kingdom, right? And we all and every as we have households that are built on that foundation in perfection and replicating after itself, that's how the kingdom of Elohim spreads throughout the earth. That's how now, as it is in heaven, so shall it is on earth, right? So this is the common unity we all supposed to have, to where now we have households who come to before Yahuwah on feast days, producing fruit, presenting a harvest to Yahuwah. Your household is that harvest you come before Yahuwah on, showing what you've been doing as the head of the house for those under your stewardship, right? To a full measure of stature and full maturity and completeness. So this is the constant cycle every year. As a husband, you're supposed to be perfecting your house and your family and your children to present before Yahuwah, right? Until you check up out of here, right? To where you get that well done, my good and faithful servant, right? That's what you're aiming for. So all this is about Mashiach. Marriage and everything is all about to the esteem of Yahuwah and his image and likeness, being made in his image and likeness, and creating households after his image and likeness to spread throughout the earth. So light is everywhere and darkness has no place to hide, right? Psalm 68 and 6. And this is how we influence the world. Yahuwah wants you to influence. He wants kingdom families to influence the world. So we be the ones that people look to and want to follow after and mimic after because we are carrying that light, right? But if we don't get the foundation of the household in order first, we can't as a nation be the light to the nations. All right. It all starts from the foundation. All right. Psalm 68, verse 6.
Elohim makes a home for the lonely. He brings out into prosperity those who are bound with chains.
Mhm.
Only the rebellious should dwell in a dirty land.
There it is. They shall dwell in a dry land, right? So notice Elohim makes a home, even for the lonely, right? He brings out into prosperity. All right. He's the one that's going to prosper your way, right? Even as your soul prospers. But those who are bound with chains of sins and iniquity, only the rebellious, they're going to dwell in the dry land. They're not going to produce. They're not going to be able to be fruitful. They're going to shrivel up, be stagnant, and die. And you want to make sure you're not a plant that is being stagnant, right? To shrivel up and die, right? To only be good for firewood because you didn't produce after the seed that you were created to produce after, right? Because you're not nourishing, you're not doing the things and allowing the Ruach to water you. So you have to make sure you don't become this dry plant because you're not going to be able to produce anything out of that. All right. Ephesians 5 and 33.
Nevertheless, let every one of you, in particular, to love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband.
There it is, right? So reverence her husband, right? What does reverence mean, y'all? Somebody tell me that. What does reverence mean?
Representation.
Say it again.
The representation, like being like his representation.
Hmm. Yeah.
I,
Oh, go ahead.
I take it as reverent as representation too, but I also take it as when you say reverence, it's acknowledgement, but not just acknowledgement. You're supposed to be reverence is more of a respect and honor type thing. As you were speaking of when you say you were speaking last week of it,
Hmm.
when you reverence, it's not it's fear, but in a way of it's not the fear of what we saying. How can I say this in a proper better term?
Hmm.
Um, mm, I take what you said, Shalom. I'll take what you said, but yeah,
Okay, there's some good answers, right?
yeah.
There's some good answers. So reverence.
Reflect,
Said what? To reflect, respectful fear,
like being
honor.
like his image. Yeah.
All right. So let's look at this word, right? Let's break this down for a
It's
second.
like okay. It's hold on, Aki. Let me get it out real quick. Okay,
Uh-huh.
it's a respect as you was talking about last week, but it's also admiration. You know what I mean?
Admiration.
It's like a
Okay.
esteem,
Uh-huh. To be in
like a
awe.
esteem, right?
To be in awe of,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good answers here. Definitely good answers here. So it says, see it so, right? That the wife see that she reverence her husband. So we're gonna look up what this word is, and it says phobio, right? Now, phobio means to frighten, that is passively to be alarmed. right? By analogy, to be in awe of, right? As we just talked about, right? To be in awe of, that is revere, right? It says afraid, fear, exceedingly, reverence, right? And now we look up the root to that, of phobio. There's a lexicon definition. It means to put to flight by terrifying, to scare away. It says to put to flight, to flee, to fear, be afraid, be struck with fear, to be seized with alarm, of those startled by strange sights or occurrences. You know how when Yahuwah thunders and everybody startles and scared, or when the husband or the father steps in the house and he call, the children straighten up real, it's a certain reverence that he carries, right? To be struck with amazement, huh? It says to fear, be afraid of one, to fear, to do something for fear of harm, to reverence, venerate, to treat with difference or reverential obedience. All right. So notice what this word is saying here, right? So now that same Greek word again is same in the Hebrew for where it says we are to reverence or fear the Most High. It's the same. So it's the same word. So question would be, sisters, what do you think about that? What do you think about that, sisters? They quiet. All right. Well,
Hold,
um, okay, you got
hold on,
some.
Ak, you gotta give him time to unmute.
Yeah.
You gotta give him time to unmute.
All right, all right. And
Ema, you muted.
I
Queen, you
am
muted.
fully aware.
Okay.
all right, all right.
Hold on. And Ema Hananiah, you muted too.
Yo, funny.
Could you say
Okay.
the question again?
Okay, so basically what I'm saying is we went so going over these definitions of fear, right? We noticed that this word is the same equivalent Hebrew word, right? For when it says to reverence or fear the most high. Same word, right? And so my question is to sisters, what do you think about that? What does that mean for you now? Understanding that with this word and this reverence
I
and
think the word that troubles me most, can you hear me?
uh-huh.
I think the word that troubles me most is um of the word fear.
Mm,
Um I really don't feel comfortable being with somebody that I have to completely fear,
mm,
because that means that I'll have a difficult time trusting them.
mm,
And if I'm supposed to trust him, how do they go into the same basket? You know what I mean? In the same characteristic to
mm,
honor. I believe in the honor, the submission, to obey, to follow,
mm,
to be led, to be taught, all of those things. But to fear, that word troubles me.
mm.
So that you'd have to explain to me in a way where I would be able to understand it and embrace it. But that's my problem right now.
Okay, so the English word fear, which we know it means reverence, right? So if we take away the word fear, we put reverence, but reverence still means to be struck with reverence, to be seized with alarm, startled, right? To be struck with amazement, afraid of one, right? So when you look at the Father, are okay, is it we fear the Father, do we not? Does it feel cringing when we say we fear the Father or we reverence the Father? Is it kind of cringing to us to say that? Which
Not for me.
okay, okay.
Yeah, it's I think that, okay, fearing the Most High is one thing. It's being very mindful of one, your attitude, your response, your reverence, is a good word, your submission,
Mm,
not to reject his word. There was a time where I say, okay, wait a minute, but then that was me coming out of the Christian belief system and so on and so forth.
mm,
But as I am still continuing to grow, let
mm,
me add that. Um, um, the word fear and reverence to the Most High, I can see that, but the word fear, I don't know, it somehow strikes me a little bit strange. You know what I mean? And
Right.
like I said, it's out of lack of an understanding of
Mm,
what it really means for me. You
mm,
know what I mean? I'm not saying it's any different for anybody else.
mm.
It's my understanding has
Right.
to be, transformed, so, for lack of a
Right.
better word,
Right. Right. I
So
understand.
that's
Mm-hmm.
but I get it. I get
Mm-hmm.
it. I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say even cautious, you know what I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to
Right.
your husband, when you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
situations, but to be in utter fear, if we are a partnership, if we are
Mm-hmm.
bound together, why is it, or how is it that uh, a wife, I believe that a wife should be able to have a voice in a decision, but the final decision is made by the husband. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
but
Oh.
but she I believe sometimes in when it comes to those relationships and those big decisions, even the small ones that we're not sure of, you know what I mean?
Mm,
When we communicate that and we put it out there to our husbands, then I believe that as long as we're heard and understood, if he still says that this is what we need to do because so and so, then I can see. You see what I mean? But to go
mm-mm.
forward and not have a voice so that I would have the understanding of why the decision is being made, I'm
Mm.
good. I'm good
Right.
if I can
Uh,
get understanding. And I think
okay.
that's the thing.
Right.
So yeah.
So now talking about now saying that, right? When
Hmm.
it's saying this reverence or this fear, just as unto the Most High, right? That reverence and that fear you have unto the representative of the Most High on earth, which is your Ish or your husband, right? So knowing
Okay.
how the Father, how we deal with him, we understand that. Do we always understand everything when he tells us to do something? Not always, right?
Not
Not
always, not
always,
always.
but
Hmm.
but you honor what he's saying to do, even though,
Absolutely.
right. So that's a reverence because you understand his authority. That hey, I may not understand it, I may not even agree with it wholly right now because I don't understand it. But if it's not against, if it's not wicked, I know it's not from you. If it's wicked, I know it's not from him. So if he's telling me to do something, I have to just obey, and then I may understand later. You won't always
Uh-huh.
understand up front. So it's the same thing like with
Right.
with a king. If a king tells ushers a decree, the
Uh-huh.
servants may not always understand the whole synopsis of the decree, but they know that when a king is a decree, the subject's supposed to do it. You know what I'm saying? Or there's repercussions or consequences for not fulfilling the decree of the king, right? So it's the same thing with an
Okay.
ish and a husband. It's not so much a partnership. We have roles, right? We're not partners in a
Okay.
way of equal authority, but we are in a unit body where everybody's roles and functions are honored in what they bring to the relationship. But it's not in that way of, okay, we have equal say, equal authority in a situation. It's that's why the reverence is for the wife because she understands he's the supreme authority, just like the father is the supreme authority. So we don't question his authority by saying, "Hey, I'm saying, until I get understanding, I'm not moving." You know what I'm saying? Because then
Uh-huh.
then it's like you question his leadership, and
Uh-huh.
Yah gets mad at us. So that's to us is we don't have faith or we don't hope, we don't have a good or a positive mind in what he's telling us to do because it may be foreign to us, it may be uncomfortable of what we normally do or are comfortable with. So it's the same thing when you're fully submitted and assimilated to where, okay, I'm a servant. I know it's not going to always come the way that I'm comfortable with when somebody has rulership or authority over me. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be unknown things and things that may be, you know, but trust that,
Yeah.
hey, this is my leader, I'm a trust. And that's where that
That's
love
that's
too.
the word.
Yeah, the
That's the word right
trust.
there.
Right,
That's the
right.
word right there. That one, yeah, and that's why fear just does not feel comfortable to me. You see
Okay.
what I mean? That if that's where fear comes in, do I trust him enough? Has
Mm-hmm.
he proven himself? Even the Most High said, prove me and see if you know what I mean?
That's true.
And so that
That should
has
be done. That has to be done before you say that he's gonna be your husband. Because if
okay.
you can't ask him to prove why he's already in the position of authority. You have to make sure that's proven before you agree to the covenant of his authority to rule over you. You get what I'm saying? So these are the things, if you don't trust him in that way to be the leader and trust his decisions, then maybe you just don't want to marry. You want to wait, or you want to make, because if you don't feel comfortable like that, then don't make the man the head over you. You know what I'm saying? If you don't trust his
Mhm.
leadership like that, because then you're going
Mhm.
to question his leadership, and then that's going to cause a relationship if you're already in covenant and he can't fulfill his
Mhm.
role in a peaceful way because he feels like, well, she doesn't trust my authority. She doesn't trust my leadership. So she's gonna question every movement I make. She's gonna be hesitant. And you know what I'm saying? And y'all don't even like that when we do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When he wants us, he be like, lack of faith? Huh? Or you don't trust me? He even feels the type of way about it. So it's the same thing. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
process. It's a process of
Yeah.
growing and learning from that too. But yeah, definitely.
Right. And I do agree with that. I agree with that 100%. But
Mm,
I've even spoken that to my daughters, not to
mhm,
rush,
mhm,
not that I love you thing, hold
mhm,
off for a while. You know
mhm.
what I mean? Because I've always felt that those first 5 years, at least, that first 5 years, everybody's putting their their good foot forward.
Whew, a lot of people
You
can't
know what
even
I
get through the
mean?
first 5 years in this
That's
generation.
what I'm
Uh,
saying. That's what I'm
yeah.
saying.
Now it's the
And
first 2 or 3
it takes
years.
time. It takes time because of the way
Man,
the world system has raised us up. You know
very
what I'm
true.
saying?
Very, very true.
So
That's the key.
everybody wants to look good and they want to do that, this, that, and the other,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure they present themselves. And then here we go a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where'd this come? And then you find out in the midst of the trial that they're going through, they had serious, deep
Oh,
issues
yeah.
with their fathers or their
All
mothers. You know what
right.
I'm saying?
So this
And
is
they've
what
carried
courtship.
that in.
This is
Exactly.
this is why the courtship is so important, and
Important.
this is also why they encourage in courtship that the intimacy part should be not engaged, because then
Yes.
it
Yes.
clouds everything, it clouds your judgment.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
courtship is very, very important, and for those who may have appetites that aren't very in self-control, you may want to have some chaperones in your courtship to make sure
Mhm.
that things are being done, to where
I
y'all spending the
know.
right kind of time together so things don't get clouded, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cousin who is one of the leaders in his community with the Muslims, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he was sharing with me how they court and how there is no such thing as dating. There is no
Exactly.
such thing. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like they well, he'll see her and he'll make an offer to her, but they have someone to go, like say for instance the groom, I'm going to call him what I'm familiar with. The groom will have someone that he trusts that's going to have his back to interview the bride, and then the
Mm-hmm.
bride's person will interview him,
Yep.
and they
That's our
come
culture.
together and
That's
make a decision.
that's our
I've seen
culture.
it. I
That's what
haven't
I
seen
was
I
saying.
have
That's
not
the
seen it.
Eastern
Okay.
culture. Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
how it's done. Definitely.
Okay.
Because a
Okay.
lot of
All
times
right. All
when
right. Okay.
we're very directly into a situation, it's so close to us to where we can't really judge it in the right way. So it's good to have outside of self, to go and inspect a situation to give you a view of perception outside of yourself that helps you to see clear sometimes, because it could be too personal close to us where we don't see clear. So that's why this courtship, the family interviewing each other's family and best friends and so forth, and people you trust, right, that know you, all that is very key. um
Right.
Queen, I think you had your hand raised before I go to the next person. You still had a question or a
Oh no,
comment?
I'm clear. I was just gonna answer it, but it's fine now.
Okay, okay.
But yeah.
All right. Y'all, we need restoration. Got your hand up.
That's me,
Mhm.
Aki.
All right.
That's me. That's me.
Huh?
No, I was saying that's why y'all test us in our because we first married to Yahuwah, you know, and he look how we manage our, like you said when you're talking about stewardship. He look how we deal with everything around us and we're stewardship with to see how we gonna treat his kingdom and treat him,
Mm-hmm.
you
True.
know. And when she was talking, you answered it, and as y'all kept going,
Mm.
but that's what I was saying.
Okay.
When we already be putting ourselves in positions that we didn't really observe the right way,
Mm.
that also get us in trouble, or we have to adapt in that situation according to Torah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why this marriage is the most, again, this is the most heaviest decision you're gonna ever make in your life. It's not something you want to rush into. Yeah, it ain't something you want to just stumble across, right? It's something you really want to invest in and make sure, because this is a life partner, and you're not just marrying that person, you're marrying their history, generational bloodline curses that may have not been broken. A lot of things are considered when you're taking a spouse, all right? And if you know you have a mission and a purpose, you need alignment. All these different things are very important. So nothing you want to rush into, family. But it's a very beautiful thing when it's aligned the way Yahuwah intended it to be. All right. So we're gonna continue going forward. So again, this now understanding that the wife is supposed to reverence her husband, just the same reverence that she has a reverence for Yahuwah, in that way of respect and honor and all this alarm and afraid, in the sense of, we're going to talk about how that afraid works, because sometimes that can be misconstrued, but we're going to talk about it. But there's a fear of harm, right? But what does that mean? We're going to talk about that. But understanding that this reverence now, right? Now there's a communication that can be had when you understand, okay, I can't just come to my husband any old way, because I can't come to the Most High just any old way. I'm not going to just run off the mouth after the Most High. I'm going to prepare myself to speak. I'm coming before a king, someone of honor, right? So there's a way you prepare yourself. Same kind of reverence, with your ease, right? So we communicate now, we can dialogue. So basically the fear part, some may say, well, I don't fear my man, right? You must be crazy, right? I hear what it says, but nah, I can't do that. I do have a fear of the Father for sure, but I guarantee you he loves me, right? So because I know he loves me, I know he's not going to treat me a certain way, but I have a fear that if I do, there's going to be consequences that come when I violate his commands, right? Everyone's understanding that, right? So the man, he stands in the same steed, in a sense, on earth as in representation of the Father, because the pattern is that we are acting on behalf of the Father, right, towards our household as head of the house. And the woman is like, I see the Father in him and what he's telling me. I have a fear that if I violate the things that he's telling me, because number one, I saw it in the word and I see it in him, right? So I better not disrespect him. I better not do these things, because there's a punishment that comes, right? Now listen to what the punishment comes, right? Because does that mean that the man is going to take his fist and try to put it through her cavities or something, right? Is that what that fear is, or is it something else, right? So we know it's something else. So here's the fear, right? Well, you want to do that, and I'm in line with the Most High, and he's my head and I'm your head. The fear is going to be the Father is going to come after me because of how I treated you, right? Does everybody see that? That's the fear of harm, knowing that, hey, I'm about to be, Most High is going to get me for doing and going against you, because you are his representation. You are in line with him and his will. And I'm going against that, or or I'm abusing that, right? So now Yah's going to come and bring judgment on me, right? And I fear the repercussions of my actions. So because I fear, I will not disrespect this man. I will not dishonor this man. You see that? That's the fear and reverence, because there's consequences that come behind you doing it, right? Just like we know when we violate Yahuwah's commands, we know, man, there's some consequences that come if we violate Torah. We know, and it may come unexpectedly when we least expect it, but it's coming. that whooping is coming. There's a belt coming. You see that? So that's the fear, right? So again, this fear is in the man, so to speak, right? But ultimately, what you just violated, you violated the Father, right? So let's just see how that transfer works in the scriptures for those to get a clarity, a better understanding. Let's look at Luke chapter 10, verse 16.
He who hears you hears me. He who rejects you rejects me. And he who rejects me rejects him who sent me.
There it is. So Yah has sent the man, right, as the head, right? So if your wife don't hear you, because she's supposed to listen to you, right? She's supposed to submit to you, then she is not hearing Yahuwah. If she's rejecting her husband when she's supposed to be assimilating to her husband, right? Then you're not ultimately rejecting your husband, you're rejecting the Most High, right? You're rejecting the one whom is in his stead, right? As the representator on earth in physical form, who you have to submit and answer to as the authority, right? So do you see how the transfer works? If you reject me, you're ultimately rejecting the Father. So you should have a fear of him because of how he created us, right? And how he made a circuit, so to speak, from the Father. Son, man, woman, children, that's a circuit, right? So it's a complete circuit. So again, um, you know, when we're all aligned, we can consider ourselves one, right? I pray that they be one as we are one. Is what the Mashiach says. But if we're not one with him, something takes place because now I have to let the one that's not, right, that aligned, so that circuit can continue, right? Because if not, the adversary sees that, right? So it's his time that he can come in between you and all and everything, right? And in between the whole situation, which therefore we have to get back in line. Therefore, he chastises whom he loves for that reason, right? He doesn't want you to go your separate ways, right? Is everybody with me so far? But he needs you to realign yourself because you got out of line, right? And if that's going to come with some repercussions, some chastisement to get you back in line, that's what's going to happen, right? But that's the fear of getting out of line and saying, you know what, I'm not going to get out of line. I don't want y'all to come visit me. Oh no, I don't want none of that. You know what I'm saying? That's the reverence, right? You see a Lot and his wife, right? You see that they was one, but they didn't one adhered to the word, the other one didn't want to, right? And there was repercussions for that. There's supposed to be a fear, right? But she didn't fear. She looked back instead and did, and now she turned to a pillar of salt, and she's no longer with Lot. She lost her husband, she lost her life too. You see that? So there's a fear and a reverence that's supposed to be present to not violate. All right. Let's look at Ecclesiastes 9 and 9.
Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity,
Mhm.
which he have given thee under the sun all the days of thy vanity. For that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun.
Cain, right? So again, understanding this circuit, right, and this transfer, we it's easy to say we love Elohim, right? When we don't have a physical Elohim that we seeing and physical voice that we have to see and hear in a loud way or in a tone or in a certain function that has us having to move, right? And actually act and do certain things on a regular day-to-day basis, right? But when Yah puts a man in his stead as his representator, as a mouthpiece for him, right? And the head of the house, you supposed to carry that because you can't say you love an invisible Elohim, but the one that he placed in his stead you reject and you disobey and rebel against, right? That's hypocrisy, right? So again, that's how Yah knows you love him by how you submit to what his word said concerning the authority that's placed over you in submission to, right? That's how he knows you love him. But when you reject him, you're not rejecting the man in front of you, you're rejecting Most High. You're rebelling against the Most High. And that's how you have to see through the lenses of the spirit and not your carnal eye. You think you're doing something to this man when you're doing against Yahuwah. Same thing like how Dawood understood this, right? Every people understand when you've been ordained by the authority of the Most High, you've been anointed by the Most High. You don't go against that because you're going against directly the Most High, right? That's why he wouldn't put a hand on Saul. Even when Saul got in error, David wouldn't touch him because he understood the authority came from heaven. He didn't have the authority and the jurisdiction to go against that. Yah had to get involved. So it ain't the wife's position to go and to correct the Ish in that way. He has an authority that's above him that's going to get him in line. Just how Saul had to, Yah had to deal with Saul, not David. All right. So you see how this works. You have to reverence the understanding of authority and how it is transferred in representations, and understanding that, hey, to go against that is to go against the very authoritator that gave the authority. Then you move different. You perceive and you take caution. You see that? All right. So he's telling you to live joyfully with the wife whom you love is all the days of your life of thy vanity, which he has given thee under the sun. So you're supposed to enjoy life, right? All the days of thy vanity here, and you should have a good partner to have that experience with, right? For that is it says that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun, right? So what does that mean to live joyfully with her, right? Live joyfully. Understand what joy is in the marriage, right? And you can live joyfully with her, right? But this is your portion. All right, so she's your portion, right? She's your portion. Have joy with her, basically, right? And these are the things we should do. Let's look at Sirach 26:3.
A good wife is a good portion, which shall be given in the portion of them that fear Yahuwah.
There it is, right? Verse 4.
Whether a man be rich or poor, if he have a good heart toward Yahuwah, he shall at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance.
Wait a minute, so poor men can have wives too? I thought all wives were just for the rich, right? The wealthy, those who, in the social class, right? Today's society, that's what they try to push out in the narrative in social land, right? You got to be this wealthy man to deserve love and a companionship, right? But y'all saying, nah, a good wife is a good portion. No matter if a man is rich or poor, he's gonna have, if he has a good heart towards Elohim, he's gonna rejoice, right? He's gonna have a cheerful countenance. He's gonna be able to experience this love, right? You see that? So this is for anyone who is seeking and desiring, right? That has a good heart. And that's the key. How many people have a good heart and they're seeking companionship? Because a lot of people have these bitter hearts and they just are lonely and they don't want to be alone, right? But they ain't did the inner heart work to be able to sustain a relationship that they saying they want, right? So if you don't know how to love yourself, don't think you're going to attract or be in the company of someone to love you when you don't love yourself, right? When you know how to love yourself and then you get in a relationship, you're not coming depleted where you think somebody has to just give their whole self to you and then they depleted and you don't know how to reciprocate it because you don't know how to love yourself to be able to reciprocate that love back to that person that's been pouring into you. All right. That's how you become toxic, right? You be a toxic one in a relationship and codependent because you didn't do the inner work to be a full person 100% by yourself, right? So that's what's key too before you get in a relationship is loving yourself, right? Then you can understand the love of another person and the sacrifice of trusting and relinquishing and being vulnerable and being able to pour into another without having walls and trauma from that stuff you haven't healed, and now you making this person pay and suffer for your past traumas that you didn't deal with before the relationship, right? So these are key things. Let's read verse 5. Sirach 26:5.
There be three things that mine heart feareth,
Mm-hmm.
and for the fourth I was so afraid, the slander of a city, the gathering together of an unruly multitude, and a false accusation. All these are worse than death.
Mm-hmm.
But a grief of heart and sorrow is a woman that is jealous over another woman, and a scourge of the tongue which communicateth withal.
There it is, right? So you're not supposed to have jealousy, right? A woman ain't supposed to be jealous. of her husband. Is there anywhere where you see us supposed to be jealous of Mashiach, of other people wanting to know Mashiach, wanting to be in his presence, wanting to love Mashiach, wanting to, do you see anywhere in the scriptures where it's okay for us to be jealous of another brother or sister wanting to be in covenant with Mashiach and have an intimate relationship with him? No, because we are the possession. We don't possess Mashiach. Where's the role and the function? The husband is the possessor. We're the possession, right? Husbands, you are the possessor of your wife. She does not possess you. You understand? You are the master of the house. Everything in that house is your possession, and she is there as a helpmate unto you to keep those things and sustain those things, right? But again, today women are looking at men as possessions. They think they're the possessor. That's why the jealousy and all this other stuff it comes into play, because things aren't taught in the proper perspective, right? So again, there's no fear. You don't fear to tell your wife or to be honest with your wife, knowing that she's yours, right? You're not scared to say, this is what I desire and this is what I expect, right? Because you're not worried about, oh, well, she's going to do something to me, because you're the head, right? You don't fear any repercussions from what you think she can do. She's not an authority over you. If you're a righteous man and you know you're doing things in righteousness, you should always be honest and true to your wife. You shouldn't be scared to tell her anything and be true to her, right? If you scared and think you got to answer to her in that way, then that's your mindset. You have some healing and things to do, right? You the head, you supposed to lead and honor and respect, right? You don't fear. All right. So again, this there's a we have to renew our minds. This is the problem. All right. Jealousy is not a trait that women should have, and even men shouldn't be jealous of other men either. Right? That's not a trait of Elohim. You should love your brother as yourself. That's what it is. All right. Sirach 26:7 says, an evil wife is a yoke shaken to and fro. He that hath hold of her is as though he held a scorpion. Right? So again, you need to suspect and you need to examine. All right. Do not just go into something because you're lonely or y'all vibing. All right. You catch some vibes. That don't mean that this is the one. All right. Jeremiah chapter 3:18 says, in those days the house of Yehuda shall go to the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north, and to the land that I have given as an inheritance to your fathers. But I said, how would I put you among the children and give you a pleasant land, a splendid inheritance, right? Of the host of the nations. And I said, call me my father, and do not turn away from me. For surely as a wife treacherously departed from her husband, so have ye dealt treacherously with me, O house of Israel, declares Yahuwah. Now that word treacherously, right? That word is the Hebrew word bagad, right? And it means to cover with a garment, to act covertly, right? To act covertly. To implication, to pillage, deal deceitfully, treacherously, unfaithful, offend, transgress, depart treacherous, unfaithful, right? So this is what treachery, as a wife being sneaky, going behind her husband's back, right? Covertly, supposed to be his helpmate that's for him, but she covertly is an enemy against him because she has her own will that's against her husband's will, right? She hasn't relinquished her own will to submit to the husband, right? So by all means, she don't get her will done. So she'll manipulate, she'll move covertly against him, right? Just to get her way. These are evil things. These are treacherous things, right? Or to go behind your husband's back and commit some type of uncleanness, right? Fornication or adultery, right? Seeking attention from other men. All these different things are treacherous. It's not being faithful, right? So Israel did this to Yahuwah, and there was repercussions for it, right? But God says to act treacherously, deceitfully, to deal treacherously, to act or deal treacherously, faithlessly, deceitfully, to offend, right? The root here is it means to deal deceitfully, unfaithful, offend or transgress. All right. So yeah, so if your husband has rules and regulations, you're not supposed to violate those just because you feel like I want to know. right? I'm gonna go violate him while he's in the bathroom and shower. I'm gonna go through his phone. You violating his privacy, right? Or I'm gonna go into this because I feel like he may be out there talk whatever it is. That shows you don't honor your ish. You gonna violate boundaries that you shouldn't be doing. You wouldn't do that to your father. Would you go to your father's phone while he's doing whatever doing to go see what your father is doing or up to, right? Would you tell him, you know, if your father inspected you and because you're under his stewardship, he's supposed to know your influences, your friends, your company, who's influencing you, and he wants to know what type of friends you have, and he says, "Give me your phone." Are you gonna say no to your father? No, you're not. You understand the authority in the situation. You understand he's the person watching over your soul, right? He's a watchman over your soul. That's his duty to know what is going on, right? So when you look at your person as the partner and equal, it's not. That's where the problem comes, right? Because it's not that in the relationship. They're not equal in authority, right? So you have to understand that these are things that you can become treacherous, where your ish he'll not trust you because he sees that if you move by an impulse of your feelings or somebody getting in your ear or whatever the case is, or you got jealousy or insecurities, and you'll violate, these boundaries between authority that you know is not cool to do, right? And you know it's not righteous to do, then that creates problems, right? So if you have trust issues, these are things you want to heal before you get into a marriage, right? Your husband isn't your son, right? You don't go through his things. You don't violate the boundaries that you know is clear that you would not even violate with your own authority that was your father before you came to your husband's house, right? 1 Corinthians 7:3, it says, let the husband render to his wife what is her due benevolence, and likewise also the wife to her husband, right? Now that word benevolence, right? So this is what Yah says you have to render, right, to each other. This is the word uneo, or eunoia, right? And it means kindness, right? Euphemistically conjugal duty, benevolence, goodwill, right? In the Greek it means kindness, conjugal duties. The root word also means to be well-minded, right? That is reconcile, agree, all right, to agree. So from his root word means to reconcile, to be well-minded, to agree. So everyone's good with that, right? So this is what you're supposed to render to each other: kindness, right? This conjugal duties, which for those that don't know what conjugal means, this is sex, right? Your intimacy with each other, right? So y'all supposed to render to each other these things, all right? Goodwill. 1 Corinthians 7:4, and none of these things are supposed to be used as tactics to try to manipulate someone to get in your way either, right? Again, submission, right? If your husband has a certain kind of appetite, you gonna have to adjust to his appetite, right? If he likes frequent things, you're seeking to please your ish, right? If the Most High is calling you to spend more intimate time with him in prayer and so forth, right? Opposed to just giving him 30 minutes or whatever the case, right? And he's calling you to do, and that's what he desires. You want to please the Most High. You want to separate and set yourself apart to spend that time with him, right? So if your husband is asking for that type of time intimately with you, then you don't try to negotiate or try to manipulate or try to say, well, I'll do this if none of that. You're supposed to relinquish and willingly want to submit to your ish, right? And desire him in that way. All right. 1 Corinthians 7:4 says the wife have not power of her own body, right? But the husband, and likewise also the husband have not power of his own body, but the wife, right? So you don't want to be neglecting each other, because this is how Satan can come in, right? If y'all people have needs and desires in the relationship, and y'all want to make sure that y'all fulfilling each other's appetites in that way, it should be healthy appetites. You shouldn't be hypersexual, understand? But nevertheless, you don't want to neglect each other. 1 Corinthians 7:5 says, defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent, for a time that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer. Now remember, a wife has to go to her husband before she vows to do these type of things. She has to get his approval, right? Remember we went in Numbers 30 to see that this authority that the husband has, she has to go and get that clear, right? So if she wants to make a vow to fast for these amount of days, you bring it to the east, and he said, okay, I honor that. Or if he says no, he's like, hey, we got a lot of things going on, maybe this few days, you know what I'm saying? Or who's going to, cook, the kids got to eat, everybody got to eat, you know what I'm saying? So you can't go this amount, we'll do this. If that's what he says, then you have to honor that. God's still going to honor you making a set apart time to spend with him, but he's watching how you submit to your ish at the same time, all right? So, in other words, we understand that the man and the woman belongs to one another, right? And there are some conjugal visits that you guys can do in your private time, but other than that, it says except for when you're praying and fasting, all right? But again, but if not, what winds up happening is Shaitan comes in because of your inconsistencies, right? Showing that we are inconsistent, or while we are we better? The thing is we have to stay together, right? Even though we may have inconsistencies sometimes, the adversary is going to use those things, right? He's going to try to use that if you're not careful, right? Just like some may say, well, I'm consistent in prayer. Oh, yes, I love to pray, right? And we do it faithfully like that. And I'm not talking about, you're so tired to where you just jump in the bed and you lay down and say a few words like, Father, I love you. I prayed and I go to sleep, right? I gave him some time. I'm good now. No, no, that's lazy, right? How can you sustain a relationship and that's what you've given in a relationship and think it's going to be prosperous and fruitful? So we got to honor each other. We got to love each other, right? All right. 1 Corinthians 7:6. We almost done, y'all. And it says, but I speak this by permission and not a commandment, right? For I would that all men were even as myself, but every man hath his proper gift of Elohim, one after this manner and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I, right? But if they cannot contain, let them marry, right? For it is better to marry than to burn, right? So for those who have, certain appetites, right? Yeah, you want to fulfill those things in a righteous way, right? So you want to be burning with lust. It's better to marry than to burn with lust, right? Verse 10 says, and unto the married I command, yet not I, but Yahuwah, let not the wife depart from her husband, right? So the question becomes, who's commanding this, y'all? Who's commanding what we're reading right here? Any takers? Who's commanding this?
Is it Paul?
Paul, it's Paul.
Is it Yahuwah or is it Shaul?
It's Saul.
Paul.
It's Paul, right? This is Paul's instructions here, right? So remember, he says, I speak this by permission, not of commandment. Okay, this is not a commandment, because if it was, I would wish all men be as himself, because we know that Paul was like a eunuch, right? He didn't desire a woman, right? He was just totally submitted and committed to the kingdom of Elohim. He didn't want to, have a spouse, right? So notice he's saying, this is what I suggest you do, all right, in these situations, right? And nevertheless, uh, uh, he's giving his opinion, okay? So when we say Yahuwah here, what is he commanding? Because now he's saying, but Yahuwah let not, but he goes from what he said, he says, unto the married I command, yet not I now, but Yahuwah. It says, don't let the wife depart from her husband. So Yahuwah's command is, wife, do not depart from your husband. Even though Shaul is saying what he's saying, right? But he says, let me tell you what the command of Yahuwah is, though. I already told you what I've given you by permission, not of commandment. But let me tell you, reaffirm what Yahuwah's command and instruction is. Let the wife not depart from the husband, right? So he's quoting something from somewhere, which is exactly what the Torah says, right? So then we're gonna listen to verse 11. What it says. What does Yahuwah have to say? 1 Corinthians 7, verse 11.
But, and if the depart, let her remain unmarried,
Mm-hmm.
or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put her away his wife.
Right. So this is not I, but Yahuwah commands, right? He says, if she departs, let her remain unmarried. So his Yahuwah's desire is not for the wife to depart from the husband, but if she departs, she is to remain unmarried, or the other solution is to be reconciled to her husband, right? And let not the husband put away his wife, mean don't put your away a wife or send her out, all right, if she's trying to return, right? So he's letting you know that this is best, and the reason why he does this because again, uh when the wife leaves, right, she's open to a lot of temptation, right? And we don't need no area for the marriage or the covenant to be defiled in any way, right? Which we'll get to how those things can happen in a later lesson, right? But we see that the purpose for the father is for reconciliation, right? These marriage covenants are something, are vows and serious things. And a lot of times some women leave, they may leave the house of the husband and then portray as if they're single, right? And they're not single. They may be, separated at the moment, but today's society separated as it means like they're single today, and many men be in women's inboxes and talking to them as if they off the market or something. Or I mean as if they on the market and these are married women, right? So desiring these women is committing adultery in your heart, right? So uh you see how dangerous it can get by the woman being separated, and just leaving and being separated like that. So this is why Yahuwah desires for her not to depart, but if she does, let her be reconciled back to her ish. All right. Um, let's look at verse 12 as well.
But to the rest speak I, not Yahuwah.
Hmm.
If any brother have a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away.
So now who's speaking this?
That's Paul.
Shalum Paul, right? So Paul is saying this, not Yahuwah, right? He says, I want you to see that because he's giving you his opinion by saying it's not from the Father. Okay. Verse 13.
And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not,
Mhm.
and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him.
Verse 14.
For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband.
Hmm.
Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy.
Cain, right? So we see that what he's saying is, right? What he's saying here is that if any brother has a wife that believeth not, meaning she would be considered an unbeliever, right? And she be pleased to still dwell with you, let him not put her away, right? Because these are causes to put her away or divorce, right? If she's a unbeliever, right? You know what the Torah says, and we're gonna get to that when we get into those relationship dynamics. But we're just dealing with this right now. Um, and it says in verse 13, and the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, meaning that maybe the husband is the unbeliever in the situation. And if he be pleased to still dwell with her, let her not leave him, right? For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, right? And the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband, else were your children unclean, but now are they set apart, right? Because we're not supposed to be mixing and mingling with unbelievers, having children with unbelievers. We're not supposed to be doing any of those things, right? But there are some people that before they may have came into the walk are already yoked with someone, right? They're already in a marriage, right? So in those cases, some still would dwell with each other in a harmonious situation where they respect each other's faith or each other's stance on beliefs, right? And they don't let that cause a divide, which and that's going on today. Even today, even here in the East Africa, you have Christians and Muslims living together and having families, and they dwell like that, and there's no issues between them, which is shocking to us in the West where you don't really see that type of thing. So there are cases like that, and Shaul is saying, hey, this is my opinion, this is not a commandment, okay, because the command says we ain't supposed to be with unbelievers, right? So he's letting you know, if this is the case, this is my opinion what you should do. All right, now we're gonna look up that word holy, because he says you know for the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the ish, or the husband, right? Else you were your children unclean, but now they are set apart or holy, right? So that word holy there is higiazo, right? And hagiazo means to make holy, that is ceremonially purified or consecrate, mentally to venerate, hollow or be hollow, sanctified, right? When we look at the Thayer's definition, it means to render or acknowledge, or to be venerable or hollow, to separate from profane things and dedicate to Elohim, right? Consecrate thing to Elohim, dedicated people to Elohim, to purify, to cleanse externally, to purify by expiation, free from the guilt of sin, right? To purify internally by renewing of the soul. So the one spouse can be that figure in a relationship that causes this, right? To cause the purification, right? Even with the children that are conceived and brought forth between this union, right? Now, when we look at even before we get to this part, right? So say if you're doing everything that the Most High says, right? You know that there's going to be a blessing, right? Because it says if you keep these commandments, these blessings shall come upon you. So if you're getting all these blessings, right, and Yahuwah is with you, well, guess what? You know, you get to reap some of those benefits if you're connected to that person, right? That's how that works. And the unbeliever is seeing that your Elohim, he's really loves you and he's going to bless you. He sees that he's increasing you, right? And all this is in hopes that they should see how the Father is moving in your life as a believer, right? In hopes that the unbelieving will be converted over to see how real Elohim is in your life, in your walk, right? Even though they may be not of the same faith as you, or don't believe, or may not be walking with Yah, right? So that's the whole purpose of why Shaul is saying what he's saying. All right. 1 Corinthians 7-15.
But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart.
Mhm.
A brother or a sister, it is not under bondage in such case, but Elohim have called us to peace.
So that's where the commandment comes back up again, right? So he's letting you know, if the unbelieving depart, let them depart, right? Don't try to force anything, right? A brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases, but Elohim have called us to peace. Now that word unbelieving, right? Let's look at that word. That word is apistos, right? That word is apistos. And what it means, it says disbelieving, right? That is without, they say Christian faith, but it's the Israelite or the Nazarene faith, right? They're as a heathen, right? Passively untrustworthy person, or incredible thing that believeth not, faithless, incredible thing, infidel, unbeliever, right? So that's who the unbelieving is in a relationship. They're pretty much a person who is untrustworthy, right? They live like the heathens, right? They're faithless. right? These are infidels or unbelievers. All right, we look at the Thayer's definition, lexicon, it means unfaithful or faithless, not to be trusted, right? Pernicious, right? Incredible, it says of things, unbelieving, incredulous, without trust in Elohim, right? So these are grounds for what they would say divorce, right? To not be to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. You're not supposed to be yoked with unbelievers. So that's why he's bringing you back to the commandment. If that doesn't work with his opinion, he's letting you know, well, the commandment is this, so you don't have to be in this position of whatever oppression in your relationship because this person is an unbeliever. All right. So again, when we get to divorce, we're gonna get into all those intricacies on what is grounds according to Torah for divorce, because people today are just divorcing for any reason, and you can find yourself being in trouble for doing such things that's against Torah. Right. So the only things that are lawful according to Torah are for that. And we're gonna get into the New Testament too, when we get into that, so we can see what actually Mashiach was saying as well. Because there's a lot of confusion out there. So we're gonna be touching on that too in the coming lessons. So um the key three terms that we saw here, right, was disbelieving, untrustworthy, right? Those that don't have trust in Elohim. All right. So again, this is unequally yoked, right? Or people that act like Gentiles, right? Um, so we understand that even if you are, say, a Gentile, but you are yoked to the covenant of Israel, right? So you may have been grafted in through the promise of Abraham, right? It's still not good to be unequally yoked with unbelievers, right? Even though you may be of another nation, just because you may be of another nation ethnically, um, you still shouldn't be with that nation that if they're an unbeliever, right? And again, some people may have came into the walk, and both of them technically were unbelievers at one point, right? But one may become a believer, and then the other is not, right? So then there's something that they may need to start to do there, right? And then what will happen in this stage is because people will be like, well, what am I to do now, right? Well, he's saying, Shaul is saying, continue to do what the Most High tells you to do, right? At some point, the unbeliever, you know, you and the unbeliever may start bumping heads, right? Really bad, right? And if you start bumping heads really bad, you are not to subject yourself to the unbeliever, right? Or compromise the righteousness of Elohim, right? To please the unbeliever, all right? So, if they're trying to make you do anything outside of the scriptures, right, or against the word, you are to stay righteous, right, because your soul salvation is dependent on that, right? So if you stay a certain way, at some point the unbeliever is going to be like, look, I either can't be with you no more, right? You doing all these things, or hey, I have to because the Most High, this is what He told me to do, right? And they may feel like, look, well, I'm your husband, I'm your ish, right? So but you have to remember that that is true, but the Mashiach is also your husband, right? So you have to listen to what he says. Okay, so the Father's Torah instruction says this, and by law and covenant, you can't violate it, right? So that's going to cause a divide between the two, right? And we read somewhere in scripture where it says, what Elohim has put together, let no man put asunder or separate, right? And that's talking about what Yahuwah puts together. There are marriages that we put together, right? And they can work sometimes, right? But if you have an ordained like kingdom spouse that Yah has for you, that's what he puts together, right? So he's still doing that today. Yahuwah is still putting marriages together today. There are some called and chosen for kingdom spouses for a specific purpose and work in the earth. Um, so in many cases, some relationships don't end up working out because you have a kingdom spouse that Yah's ordained you to be with, and that may have been beforehand that before knew Yahuwah and knew his ways and got in alignment with your destiny and purpose that this was revealed. So in some cases, Yahuwah is separating or breaking relationships to bring the divine relationships that he ordained together, right? So that can also be a situation. All right. So what Yahuwah puts together, let no man put asunder. All right. So it's understandable that after seeing Elohim's high standard for true marriage, right, that we had to take heed to these things. All right. And with that being said, family, we're gonna end it here. We're gonna pick up next Shabbat.